from June 4th. Thank you, Barbara, so much for distributing them.
Move approval.
Second.
And I think we have to take a roll call since we've got some verbal, some secret, some virtual people attending.
Get back in.
Want to start, Jim? Do you approve the minutes?
I approve the minutes.
You gotta say your name.
David approve.
Ed approves.
Joyce approves.
Garrett approves.
Brian approves.
Cool. I think that's enough to, even without everybody on there. Sharon is not with us yet. I'm sure she's dodging everything out there, but we can keep talking. So Agenda B, discuss best practices, documents digitally in compliance with open meeting law. So
Yes.
it's what we got. It's challenging, but we cannot see one another's comments. I directly talked to Emily Mitchell, so about that. So when you're
Even at a meeting?
at a meeting, we can. This meeting that's posted, or any posted meeting.
Could
But-
we, the Board of Selectmen always prepares a long packet of information. Could we include our comments in a packet that go out at the same time as the agenda?
That all sounds great. We don't really seem to be having the horsepower for that kind of support from Tide and Bond. We can ask.
That's a very small amount of support.
We can ask. We can ask. But what I'm, and
It's something I can help with, so that's something to kind of move this process forward. If that's helpful and useful to the committee, I'm happy to do that as well.
yeah. So
Well,
how did everyone find the review process via the PDF?
here she comes.
Hello.
Going through the Adobe or whatever it was.
Yeah, with the Adobe.
I just can't do that. It just doesn't work.
It's great. That's for remote and everything too. Nice.
I think it's great to have both, to have access to both. It's nice. Because sometimes it can be very distracting to be.
So you mean both the, like the PDF and then the track changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have access to both.
Okay, so we're just on agenda item B, if I missed anything.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
a
no,
little
it's-
traffic
it's
coming
bru-
down.
It's brutal out there.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna necessarily solve this, this is just kind of, we're in the stew, we're in the messy middle here, I'm gonna say that like 9 times tonight. But, I agree, the docs are helpful, the PDFs are helpful. Jim, it can't access the PDFs. I'm not sure that SharePoint, my point back to you with that is the SharePoint files have to be shared directly per that email, and so
They
that,
do.
yes, so
Right, so,
that's
yes.
tricky.
Yes, I
The-
had only sent it originally to you and Christine as
Yeah.
a test.
Yeah.
I can certainly add everybody else's email to it, which would allow individual access. But it's I guess there are other questions or
By the
concerns
way,
about it.
I could get the PDFs. I just couldn't, make comments on the
In the
Adobe.
PDF. So I guess, and you'll have to kind of bear with us, Sharon, in that
Yep.
they're gonna come to you in 72 different formats or 11 different formats. Yeah, which, okay, again, this is sort of the messy middle. Related to the third agenda item, the table of contents.
Joyce,
Yes.
since Sharon just got here, could we go back to the comment we were making? I don't get to see everybody else's comments. My suggestion was, maybe when the packet of information, maybe when the agenda goes out, a packet of information as part of the agenda could have everybody's comments, so that we could at least, right now, the consultant is seeing all our comments, but we're not seeing each other's comments.
I thought once in a while I saw
Do
some
they
comments.
show up in a combined track changes
Can't
version?
actually see them and
Well-
comment on them. That was Emily Mitchell's point.
No.
You can see the comments, but like, okay, so the serial, like, I don't want to die on this hill, and again, we're sort of on the messy middle about this, and I'm not, it matters, but I'm not sure it really matters as we just keep kind of trunking forward. So say you comment on the document, and Margot puts nice comments, and then I go in and I read her comments, and I comment. That is considered deliberation.
That's not what I'm asking for.
I know, but that was what Margot was talking about.
Okay, I think what David is getting at is the idea of sending out a package before the meeting with whatever the latest version is, showing the other committee members'
Comments.
which could be just in a combined track changes version of it.
Correct.
And we don't discuss it until we get to the meeting.
Correct. We're not quite there in terms of the timing of the documents coming to us and stuff in the agenda.
Or the
It'd be
comments
very
coming
easy to
back
fix
either.
that.
Yeah. And,
Yes.
and we would have to get into sync on the comments coming back to us too. So it is definitely an iterative process. And is there any, if I could ask a question, it's not deliberation, is it, if you're seeing other people's comments?
It is.
It is?
I got on the horn and spoke to her directly about
Okay.
this. If you are seeing the comments and able to add your own comments after reading the comments, it is considered deliberation.
So forget the
With
second
the
part
exception
and
of the
just-
second part,
If you
not
just
adding
see
to the comments, but just be able to
Can't,
see.
can't actually comment on it or deliberate on it.
You can see them, but this is, we get into the timing of it, of like, okay,
Right.
that's
When does
David's
everyone's
point.
due?
Yes,
When does everyone get
correct,
them over to you?
Correct.
So it can be consolidated.
And
so
then
that
you
we can
could
get
read
out
it
in time.
before, in an ideal world, which I think, David, I think your process point is spectacular. We'd like to be able to read everyone's comments, come to this meeting having read all the comments.
Right.
But we're not quite there in terms of when things are all coming to us.
One possibility would be
Yes.
simply to set a deadline as to when comments would have to come in.
Yeah, we're,
If they come in after, that would allow them to get into the packet.
correct, but we're also.
And any comments that would come in later would have to come in at the meeting itself. That's just
Everyone-
one suggestion.
Agreed, I think it's a great one. We would all have to, they're working so hard, there's so much flying around here. We just got the documents last week.
Would a simpler approach be subgroups that worked together? Or, because I think what we're talking about is everybody saying everything, but if we work, and I know David was trying to get us.
Yes, so, and
Try for subcommittees for.
Yeah.
Can we, I not die on this right this second, but keep marching forward? I think we're all on the same page, yes, but that has to be posted, and I think we're trying to preserve that for housing, which is in our agenda here tonight.
Okay.
But being super respectful of what everyone's saying, but this is like a imperfect, messy, the olive oil and the garlic is flying in the kitchen here right now. Is
That's
kind
delicious.
of,
That sounds great.
is kind of my sense of it. So which is why I asked Sharon, we thank you for giving us a table of contents, which we did not actually have until now. So you all have that in your email. A table of contents of what the LCP is going to look like. Please, Sharon, help us understand how our big high yield documents that the public is very interested in, the HPP and the recreation and open space, is going to fit into that, because I didn't see them on the table of contents.
No, because they are separate documents with a separate planning process and approval process. So they will live on their own as a separate document, and they will also be cross-referenced in the LCP, either in the existing, or existing conditions, goals, policies, strategies, so you can pull from those, borrow from those documents in the LCP, but the idea is not to have them literally appended to the LCP, because, like I said, they follow their own process and their own approvals, and with the commission's sort of streamlined process, they don't expect you to do that either. So what we've been doing in other communities is having either a link to the town's website where all of these other documents are stored and housed, and that's been working pretty well. If someone wants to dig into the open space and rec plan, for example, it's either linked directly in the LCP or a link to the town's website where all of those documents can be found.
So my understanding, and Christine and everyone, please jump in, we've been kind of charged that we gotta get all three done, and we gotta get all three by town meeting in May. I'm understanding that correct?
HPP, open space, and LCP.
And LCP.
Okay.
Yeah, the HPP and the open space and rec plan do not go to town meeting.
Correct.
No.
They go to the planning board and the select board. The HPP goes to the planning board and the select board, correct?
Is this what we're
Please.
talking about?
And then open
can't
space and
find it.
recreation goes
It
to
was
the
in,
select board, I think.
To double
she
check
sent
on
out
that one.
two-
But, yeah, so they are not,
They get letters of endorsement either way from
See, if I can-
town boards and committees that then get submitted to the state. So
For
the open
approval.
space and recreation gets submitted to the Division of Conservation and Recreation.
It's from
for
Joyce. It
state
was on the
review and
27th.
approval. The housing production plan gets submitted to the housing, help me out here, housing, the Office of Housing and
There was
Livable
one right after,
Communities.
that was sent right after.
Okay, so let's just, so the open space and rec plan is gonna be approved by the Board of Selectmen. The
Approved or at least
endorsed, but this is, we've been charged with this, right? I mean, this is like, you're the, that committee, I should look at Margot, because she's working on that committee, but that committee is working on it, and it's eventually gonna come through here.
Yeah, 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 it will. I mean, they're farther along, although there's still a ways to go, but they're farther along with that than.
Glad anybody's farther along, it's wonderful, it's great. And the housing production plan, you said, planning board?
Yeah, we'll need at least approval or endorsement from both the planning board and the select board.
Board of Selectmen, okay. I would, unless differently, I mean, I think it kind of goes with your timelining as a, as the consultant, that you hope to finish these all sort of at the same time, like for us to go to town meeting in May, we kind of have to have all three.
right, you won't be asking town meeting to adopt the HPP, for
Correct.
example. But the LCP will, it already has a draft housing section that mirrors the housing production plan, plus anything else that you want to incorporate. So it should reflect what's in the housing production plan update.
Yeah.
So that's how it
I guess,
does get
these
brought
are
in.
three pillars, I guess is how I'm
Yeah.
approaching it, like to stand up there at the community in May and say, like, this is what this whole process that we've been torturing you about and working on, is.
And if I could, the housing production plan, the open space rec plan, our goals, our mutual goals are to have a draft or a final draft by the end of summer, so that, and Karen is essentially, has a draft HPP now. We're going to have a discussion of that at a future meeting, hopefully soon.
Yeah,
And the
okay.
open space and rec plan would be the same thing. There'd be
Okay.
a session with the LCPC on the open space and rec plan. But it
Fine.
doesn't mean you have to formally adopt it. It's, it, again, has its own sort of
Do we have,
or board that will
as
adopt
a
it.
committee, do we have like, editing capabilities?
What is that?
well, you can certainly review and comment on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, the idea here is for the, open space plan and the housing plan to be fully consistent with our plan,
Right,
so.
correct.
So
That's
there
what I'm saying,
needs
there
to
has to be
There
some,
needs to be, yeah, but what you'll find in those two plans is way, way more detail.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Got it.
One of the concerns with the housing production plans is just too much. There's some absolutely wonderful stuff in there, but we should be consolidating, editing, getting very precise about what's most important, and that's what belongs in our comprehensive plan.
okay. So
And-
thank you for the table of
And
contents.
the sub-consultant has really, Karen Sonnenberg has really, I think, made a really good effort to try to take in your concerns and comments on the first draft, on the, you know, the preliminary draft, and incorporate those into strategies, which, so this, you know, draft housing production plan now should have a good host of strategies that you could adopt in whole or in part for the LCP.
Okay. Along with that, D, you know, you had, when we had, yeah.
Can I interrupt?
Mm,
I actually had a couple of questions about the outline.
sure.
Can we talk about that?
Could I, just one point about and then please, because it has the process that we're talking about, housing production plan. I responded with potential dates to you and Karen about a second meeting of the LCP in July to work on housing, because you said she wanted to finish it by the end of summer. Just confirming she hasn't responded back to that, correct?
Okay. Okay.
You see that email?
I've had a flurry of them, so I have to admit that I may have, if you did suggest some dates, please let me take those
Housing,
down now.
Karen.
Um,
It was last week, which it surprised me a little bit. There wasn't a response, so that's.
Yeah,
what-
she's usually like very, very prompt, so I will follow up with her.
It was sent. I'll come back to you with the date.
Yeah,
once
and I
get on that.
apologize.
That's
I
okay.
do remember seeing an
Okay.
email, but I,
So I guess I would just kind of want everyone to like pencil in, we will keep you posted. We're like really trying to stay on all this because it's all flying around. Another meeting in July with Karen of the LCP to really be focusing on housing. That's why
Sure.
we left it kind of off formally the agenda tonight.
and, you know, while we're on that topic of additional meetings, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
ask this, you might want to consider that for the open space and rec plan too, to have a session that's devoted to that. And that way you could really dig in. And that should, hopefully, I mean, it depends on, there's still some loose ends on existing conditions, I understand, and some other things, goals and so forth. Could be another month, perhaps, maybe, you think?
That may be August. We were going to try and do,
Yeah.
for housing. I sent the email on June 26th to you, Christine, and
Okay.
Karen. And we were talking about potential dates Mondays, just so everyone knows, 7:15, 7:22, 7:29, or Tuesday, 7:30. And we'll, of course, have a virtual option if anyone's able to. That died in committee, so to speak, on the 26th, which is okay.
It's all right.
Cool, all right.
For the housing meeting, I know I've been looking at the chapters of our plan. Do we have the latest update of the housing production plan?
I don't think we.
Yes.
I missed
Okay.
it.
Oh, you should have
Well-
received it, yes, earlier this month, or
Okay.
like,
Once we
two or
nail down a
couple weeks
date, we
ago.
can
yes.
make sure that happens.
It was sent separately from the LCP sections, but it was,
Sharon, did that come from you?
yes.
Okay.
Marco, table of
Oh,
Go and
contents,
send it again.
please.
Yeah.
I was a little confused looking at the outline, because the outline is pretty much follows the structure of the new regional policy plan, is that correct?
Yes, it follows the template that's provided, you know, for the content of the plan, not the content, but it follows the template
Okay.
pretty closely.
Because, a couple things. First thing is that I was having trouble relating the way it's organized in the outline with the material that we're reviewing. Some of the terminology is different. For example, you know, in the outline, they talk about ocean resources, okay? And in the documents that we're reviewing, we talk about marine and coastal. There's, it's not clear to me, where the sort of background stuff that we've been reviewing would fit into this structure, because, the, it doesn't make sense to me to talk about goals and policies and then talk about existing conditions. It seems like we talk about existing conditions first and then go on to goals and policies.
It certainly could do it in that order. We've done it both ways. And one example is to have, and it just makes the goals and policies stand out, but we have organized plans under, so let's say, natural systems, and had all the goals under that set of systems and then those existing conditions. But if you wanted to flip it, I mean, there's not cast in stone
Okay.
in terms of that
Okay.
order.
I
No.
guess, like, let's take the natural resources section, which we've reviewed a couple of times now. It starts with background information, about sort of where things stand now. I would call that existing conditions.
Mhm.
And then it goes to, what are the issues facing us, and then it gets into goals and policies. Where does that language go into this structure?
So it goes into the existing conditions section. So in this outline, it's under 4, and then they're grouped by systems. But you could organize them differently if you wanted to. So what you're reviewing now are primarily the existing conditions sections for each of these. And Ocean, I think that's our error, and we can fix that. The goals and policies either, like you said, either follow that or come before that, and again, they can be grouped by systems. It's, when you get to the final document, and maybe I could show you an example at a future meeting of how this might work, and then you could talk about, yeah, we like this approach, no, we'd rather do it this way. But
It just seems like,
we're trying to provide you with some draft goals, because you haven't really discussed goals and
Yes.
policies in detail, so we're trying to
Help us.
prompt you to
I had
have a discussion about them.
which is great, and that's probably where we should focus, right? Because that's the deliberative stuff. And I actually had a follow-up question about the timing of that, being respectful of, the dollars and cents of you, Teigenbaum, which we're very grateful for as, professional to help us as consultants. But, you have to keep going too, which we get, and we're very grateful and very respectful of. At some point, the quarters in the machine run out, and we're gonna have this thing, and, in this big living document, and that, you're gonna have made sure it has all the criteria that we're gonna, be able to be approved by the Cape Cod Commission. Is there an opportunity, I'm just kind of throwing out the timeline, say, okay, we're gonna take a town meeting in May, and the quarters run out, say, in the Teigenbaum machine in October, or whatever, or December, is it appropriate for us to think that, okay, then we as a committee with Christine's guidance will have this document and can move things around? Am I understanding that correctly?
You can do that at any time, so that is part of your deliberation, your work as a committee, and even in these existing conditions sections, because you're right, there is a limit to how many revisions we can make
Yeah.
and stay within the budget.
Yes.
And so, at some point, it'd be great to talk about, like, what's maybe the most efficient way of
Yeah.
doing this.
And that's
this
why I was
part of it.
not, I didn't want
Yeah.
to shut down that conversation earlier, because I'm respectful of what everyone is saying, but like, why we have the privilege of having this high-level consultant here, like, what are the biggest things we can do? And then we're gonna have this document, and we can really, about the language and stuff like that.
Yep.
And make it ours, so to speak. I just want to make sure I understood that process correctly.
And honor that part of it, is there, like, are we tracking this from a burn perspective? Like, are we coming close to the end that we should be aware of? Like, are we pushing too much on you that's requiring, and you can just be open and honest, like,
Well,
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, the
Stink,
open space and
right?
rec plan has taken a lot more time than we had
Okay.
anticipated.
yeah,
And some of the outreach was much more extensive than what we had anticipated. So, to the extent that you can work as a committee to massage these sections, we think, like, for us, from a practical standpoint, to go through maybe maximum 2 rounds of drafts, like, we can get you to a really good point, but if you don't like the kind of the way they're coming out right now, then you should probably, deliberate on that and kind of find, a style that the committee likes, because that happened to us in another community where we had written all the sections, and then the committee took
scrap
the
it.
whole thing, they didn't scrap it, but they made it their own voice.
Which I think we're gonna wanna
And that's-
do, and I just
you
want, I
certainly
wanted
can.
everyone to kinda hear
Mhm.
that like,
Absolutely.
we're gonna have time to like, not to jump ahead in the agenda, but like, we're off in the culture section, right? But we can fix that, but that's within our skill set.
Yeah.
But I don't wanna torture you with that, like, we wanna hit you at the very highest level of why we really need the consultant, which I think what you're saying is like the goals.
The goals, policies, and the action plan.
So I'm
That's
glad
your-
everyone is hearing this,
that's
that we
the
can
meat,
kind of
yeah.
focus on that. Like, we can get the Harwich culture thing written correctly, but that may be like down the line or,
Or we get you to a good draft, that's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping is by the end of the summer, we've got you to a good draft on all these sections. Then there's also another step, which is town staff,
Yeah.
you want to seek input from town staff too.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be another round of edits, and so, there's going to be, a bit of time needed for all of that as well,
Roger.
yeah. A lot to do, yeah.
Just to.
We'll go that, and then Jim. Margot finish, and then Jim.
Finish
Yeah.
this out. One specific thing, and we talked about this last month, we don't have a section, on lakes and ponds. And it wasn't part of the regional policy plan when they last rewrote it. And I think it's kind of nested in some other places, but it's of sufficient importance that it needs its.
So you want a section on
Yeah,
lakes and,
yeah, and so we
mhm.
want goals and policies for that as well as.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely
In the
legitimate
natural resources
concern.
section.
Mhm.
Yeah, it should be in
Yeah.
there.
Because right now,
Some-
it's lumped into wetland, I would assume, right?
Yeah, and wetlands
That's
are not the-
different.
are not
Yeah.
the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
Love it.
that's, that's a fair,
I can't
fair
swim in
comment.
wetland.
Mhm.
I mean, it's pretty gross.
And then Jim,
Christine. I just make this comment, you could ignore it, because it is complex a lot, but I was surprised when I read these things yesterday, that, the idea of people is not mentioned very often, except in the stuff on facilities, and then stuff on housing. But the idea, like, if I were probably doing this, I'd probably do it in terms of, we have to think about the future for children, older adults, people who are in poverty, people with mental health,
I
blah,
think
blah,
that's a
blah.
wonderful point of
But-
feedback, and I kind of got there myself, but also kind of contextualizing this bigger, like, can we do that?
Or just,
Once
yeah,
we're
at some
through it.
point, have, you can at least mention that there are people we care about, and then it goes into, and you could do it and say, like, a couple of them really do, say, like the housing, this is gonna help older people, this is gonna help poor people, and, but a lot of it then just seems to get,
And that, I actually, in that agenda and kind of requesting it, and we will double back, is the vision statement is very people-centric, so we will probably ultimately put that in the very beginning and sort of lead with that, but, we're still in the messy middle
that's a
here.
good idea.
Right, these are,
Style points.
admittedly,
Yes.
kind of dry. They're,
Yeah,
like,
Yeah,
the facts, nothing but the facts.
but we
and-
need you for the facts,
Yeah.
like, this is
But-
really important, like,
And
for
we need
example.
you for
yes.
fact-checking.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah, because we're,
Yes.
doing a lot of sort of, not original research, so, and it's not possible with, given the
Yes.
number of studies and reports
We
and things that are
understand.
going on.
This is a
in-
massive undertaking, yes.
Yeah, so, fair point.
Christine?
Just for the coastal resiliency, will that include climate change and sea level rise as well as like hazard mitigation?
There is a climate change section, I think.
So, I thought that we,
That is agenda item. I and J, yes, I and
I
J,
hear you guys.
if you don't mind.
yes, there is both a,
But just on the table of contents.
Oh,
I
on the
didn't
table.
Oh.
really notice.
I'm sorry, I'm like, trying to, all right, I do have it here. So, yes, this is set up currently the way the Cape Cod Commission has it organized, but again, it's open to change. There's a
If-
section called coastal resiliency.
If we do make edits, and I think this goes back to her point,
Yes.
let's say we go a little rogue,
Yeah,
okay, when you
Right.
leave.
And we
But
make it
hit-
Harwichy.
We hit all these points, but
Yes.
maybe we've tweaked the naming convention or tweaked the focus on that, for instance, and maybe call it something else other than coastal resiliency, and break it down into more subgroups. Is that gonna be an issue for certification?
it isn't, as long as you have the goals covered, and so it's really it's a low bar requirement there to have the goals, and you should have an action plan that reflects all of the goals. I will say that, energy, under built systems, what's called energy technically, we are also calling energy/climate mitigation.
Okay, so
Because
we're
there's
jumping
two-
ahead in
Yes,
I
I'm
and J,
sorry.
which I'm okay with. This
Now
was,
I'm-
this
now
was
I'm
a hot,
guilty
this
of
was
it.
a hot question. We're okay with that. This was a hot question in my mind.
You do not have to, like, adhere strictly to this format.
So
But you need to make sure that all the goals are
Or at
included.
least mention their words.
So is draft energy slash climate mitigation a separate section from climate resilience slash energy use and mitigation?
Right now, it's-
They're different things. So,
Could,
coastal resiliency is more of the climate adaptation or climate resiliency. It's all terminology. And then climate mitigation is focused more on greenhouse gas reduction. And so it's more energy related and reduction of your energy
because
use
the language that was being used from you guys, which, okay, but I found confusing, is we have two separate sections now.
Yeah,
Draft energy slash climate mitigation
correct.
and climate resilience slash energy use and mitigation.
I didn't think they were called, I thought it was coastal resiliency.
No.
Well, then,
That's why I'm
that's,
confused.
it
okay,
should
well, no wonder you're confused. I'm sorry if you got it worded that way,
So-
titled that way.
So climate
it should be
change, so the
separate.
idea of energy and climate mitigation, that's like greenhouse gases.
Yes,
And then, that makes sense to me. And then there's a separate section on coastal resilience.
yes,
Okay. Mystery solved.
yes.
Okay.
Focused on more the
yeah, of
adaptation
course,
side,
of
along your
course.
coastline.
Yes,
And
of
then
course.
the climate mitigation is town-wide in terms of greenhouse gas
Yeah,
reduction.
yeah, of course. Is that, Christine? Yeah.
Because the town is also undertaking their hazard mitigation plan.
Right.
Part of that, the state is requiring that the LCP and the open space and rec plan also mention the town's efforts for that. So if we could fit in hazard mitigation as well as part of the coastal resiliency or a reference to the plan, that would be.
The update, you mean, Christine?
Yes.
Oh, of course. Mhm.
And, I mean, we're so grateful for you, our town staff, not our professional staff. Does that, what we were kind of talking about in
Yes,
terms
it
of,
does.
in terms of prioritizing their professional resources and then kind of making it,
We just want to make sure we're acknowledging these plans in tandem, and that's
yes.
all.
But it makes sense to you that then we can kind of make it our own, like, in the interval of like the fall, massage the language, the order.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, we don't want to burn their, time on, we don't like how this is worded. I mean, we want to focus on the big picture here.
correct,
That's cool.
but I think,
I'm sorry.
I think in terms of the writing and the editing, we do want to be cognizant of time and how much of Ty and
Yes.
Juan's resources
Yes.
are available, as well as the resources of the committee and how we want to structure this as efficiently as possible.
It's very, just from years of practice on this, it's very, very hard to do committee.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
So you have to, at some point,
yes.
pens down. Yeah.
Yes, no, yeah, I hear you, and that's why I'm
Thank
trying to
you,
not get us
Margo.
lost I'm trying to not get us lost in the weeds. I'm trying to stay on the bigger ideas here. All right, with that, moving right along. Oh, yeah, please.
Could I clarify?
Yes.
So I just looked, I was able to access the internet and the server here, and what I believe we sent you was called climate resilience, and
I
it's
think so,
showing
too.
up as something different for
Yeah.
you?
It
Oh,
was, we got two documents.
Okay.
One was called Climate Resilience.
Okay.
And the other was called Harwich Energy
slash climate mitigation. Okay, good, okay, then I was like, I was worried that we had titled
And
it wrong,
natural
but that is
resources.
the way we've divided it.
Okay.
But you may, and we have also discussed as a firm that there's so much overlap in these two. To some degree, there's a lot of overlap. You could consider combining them. As
No,
long as
that's
you,
okay. Yeah.
you have covered those goals, on the different goals,
Okay.
you're in good shape.
Sharon, I think it would be a good exercise for your team to just cross-reference what you've got in the outline and what you've got, in your own, summary papers to make sure that we've got.
Sure.
some-
It just
Yeah.
helps us follow along
Yeah.
from home. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of like, oh, I have less of an objection to this if I know that it kind of goes into this. Like, I think, yeah. Okay.
Very different topic on the outline, and I don't need any discussion on this. Are we still taking on the issue of governance, which I believe we said one of the community was doing in its comprehensive plan? Or have we decided that's too difficult to address?
But no discussion.
I don't need any discussion, I just want to know if we need a placeholder for it, or if we're just simply
Was
going to
that-
say no.
We
Was
should,
that on performance measures, though? Are we putting that under performance measures?
Fine with me.
I think we probably should put it as a placeholder.
Let's put it as a placeholder, I just didn't
Okay.
want to forget
Yes.
it.
I think that's
I didn't
wise.
see it anywhere in the outline.
That's wise.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, there are other communities that are doing exactly what you're doing, so,
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
you're not
Placeholder.
out of line.
Placeholder for the governance would be great. Okay. Lovely. We've talked about D. We need to keep your calendars open about, we're gonna figure out a separate posted meeting about housing. E. Important, really important, we're so grateful, professional expertise about and really accomplishing for the town, land use, drilling down percentages. And that was a big point out of our discussion last time that Brian and Garrett had led and sort of as subject matter experts about land use. And the committee's sentiment, big picture, was that we needed more data about the specific land use. And I think there's some pending stuff there in terms of the assessor and Christine. So I don't know, is this for an update? Is this about that? Ryan?
Well,
I know
Da-
David had worked with the assessor. David?
Yep.
Ryan had 7 categories.
Yep.
I think we cleared up 5 of them, and she's moving forward on that basis.
yes, yeah, I think that what she got from you, David, was really helpful.
Thank you, David.
And we're happy to move forward on that basis, just to make some progress and get that section back to you in better
Sounds great.
shape. Okay.
And I mean, that's a important, like, professional, we can't figure that out. That's a great example of the theme here of like, we can massage language, we can't figure that out. We're really great, that's a priority in terms of the consultant.
Any timing of when you expect to have that turned around? We're
For your
happy-
next meeting, so,
We're happy to look at it.
sure,
Yeah, and before.
Okay.
yeah.
Before, yeah.
These two, look at them, so,
okay.
so on
We
it.
got polos on, we're ready to go.
So on it, Nick.
Chomping at the proverbial bit.
Right in the middle of
Complimentary
summer, while
polos.
you're sipping your,
Shoot. We spent 3 hours in Boston traffic, so
You're glad to be here.
thrilled.
All right, anything, Christina, is there any, do we need anything more from you about that on E? Okay. All right, you ready to dig into culture? Let's do it. Bernadette, thank you for joining us. You're the subject matter expert about this. I wanted to kind of turn it over to you, knowing that we can work a lot on the language, but do you want to hit us on the big sort of goals and objectives, what stuck out to you?
No, I'm glancing through it all again as I'm sitting here, and, the structure of it looks fine, the key issues, the draft goals, the draft policies, that's all looking good to me. It's just, all I did really was, I saw the yellow tag already there, so I piggybacked on that because it just had the question, there was a comment in there from Ryan saying, as a committee, is there more to add here that we've overlooked? So it's not necessarily in the right place. Maybe it belongs up above in background, but I just kind of vomited out a bunch of other stuff that was overlooked. So since we're in a meeting, I can read it out to the rest of the committee. Cape Cod Theater Company / Harwich Junior Theater.
Yep, I
A
was
huge
there,
part
I was there with
of
you.
the town for
Yep.
30 years.
Yep.
First founded in the Harwich Exchange Building in the center, which is now the Harwich Center Cultural District, and then moved to the present home in West Harwich. West Harwich is also home to many historic homes of sea captains and known as colloquially here as Captain's Row. Brooks Free Library and Brooks Academy, which is home of the Harwich Historical Society. Harwich Community Center, and White House Field, home to the Cape Cod Baseball League, Harwich Mariners, and Pleasant Bay Community Voting. All of this is culture. You know, I think I've said this at other meetings and said that we remind ourselves all the time at the Cultural Council meetings, too, that culture is sometimes a really kind of amorphous concept, but it encompasses more than just arts. And it's whatever makes a community, although that's awfully vague and broad, I know. So if you see what I'm saying about culture as more than just arts, and you hear that laundry list of other things that I, off the top of my head, said, wait a minute, this is part of what makes Harwich. You know, that's just why I put that tag in there. And I just looked and saw that the date for the establishment of the 204 as a cultural facility, I think was put in there as 2016. I had said January 17, and I wasn't completely sure, but that's when the first residents went into the building. But
Sure.
I think if you're thinking in terms of when the town meeting voted for the initial pilot program, I think it's correct. It probably was the spring 2016 meeting.
Question? I guess this is for Bernadette and the group, but it strikes me that the draft policies are all continue, as if there's nothing new that we want to introduce. Did anything come up at our workshops or anything that is net new? And I'm struck by Jim's comment earlier, with people. Is there something more that we have to say about creation of a new additional policy?
I thought that, and I wanted to, yes, I agree, I had the same thing, and if we could kind of mark this as, I will volunteer, that this is, and I'm volunteering you, Bernadette, this is a section
Yeah.
Bernadette and I can make better, and we can really dig into it. Yes, the Harwich Junior Theater, the town band, there's some, I mean, it's not, how would anyone know, there are some missteps there in terms of like, community of, we need to like, the Cape Verdean history, I don't think we should probably reference Marceline in particular, there's a larger community, there's a few things that need to be translated, which, you know, I also wouldn't lead with the Chamber
And that
of
wasn't
Commerce,
in my mind, that's
Verdean
not a
community.
recent visit.
Yeah, there are some
things that
things, yeah,
I'm more struck with the policy.
yes, I'm there in a second. Around the tone, does the phrase "the warm side of the Cape" is that a thing?
Yeah.
That's a Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce marketing thing.
That I don't.
And I'm
Okay.
not sure it's really ever taken off.
All right.
There's some other issues around that too that are of
If
concern.
anybody else wants to help make the section, at least the language correct or the sentiment correct, Bernadette and I are going to.
Yeah.
Bernadette and I are going to do that. We're going to volunteer ourselves. But to the.
And to
larger-
Brian's point,
Yes, can we go to that?
you know,
Can we go to the
we
goals
have
and
a
objectives?
newly established Department of Cultural Affairs in this town. So even I totally forgot about that. That's talking about moving forward. That's, you know, that's huge. That's new. It's just, you know, she's just coming up on 2 years as a director and a department. So that, of course, should be mentioned and added in. And, you know, can certainly talk with Kara Moeni about future goals for the culture in town.
Taking advantage of you. Your resources. Yes. But Brian's great point, like, can we make these more specific?
That seems like something you guys, knowing more about the town, and to, rather than asking consultants to do it.
No, not, I guess just guiding us, facilitating. In this, like, in 5 minutes here, can we maybe get some things? That's what I'm asking.
I wonder if something popped out of the workshop. See, sometimes it's helpful to reread some of those comments. and
Yes.
say,
Frankly, not anything I heard, Brian. People were much more focused on
Housing,
so much else.
water.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, one of the issues that, or I don't know if it's an issue, but things that I think that should be mentioned is in addition to Harwich Center being a cultural district, it's also a nationally recognized historic district. That's a
right.
fairly significant thing because it, along with that, gives the Historic District Commission significant architectural control powers.
Yeah. And I believe we have not submitted a community design section to you yet, and that'll be covered also in there, so there will be some overlap.
Yeah.
Yes.
To that point, we don't say anything about 7 villages, but maybe they don't fit here, but is that a theme that we need to build on, reference, mention? I'm not sure if that's.
I'm not hearing what Brian's saying.
Oh, that one's.
Yeah, Garrett turned off my microphone, sorry.
Ah, thank you.
He's hogging the mic. I'm wondering if we should say something about the 7 villages. Does that fit into the culture?
Sure, yeah, because I think that's part of how we've ended up with 7 villages. They all have a distinct culture of their own within the
Yeah.
overall town.
We're 7
That would
and
be
we're
true.
1.
But they've changed and evolved over just the 38 years I've been here, and I'm sure for longer than that, too, so.
Well, I bet people have affinity to one village versus another. And maybe it's
Yeah.
not this
Oh, yeah,
section,
yeah.
but I wonder if it's got to be said somewhere.
It was, that, actually, that was, I can't find that file. I thought I sent a second one to you, Joyce, on the other document about community or something, and what described West Harwich sounded a lot more like East Harwich to
Yeah,
me.
no, West
and
Harwich was wrong.
so
It's
I know
okay.
that's.
We'll fix it. It's
But
okay.
that's.
It's
that-
okay.
yeah,
I'm
and that-
not gonna
but
get into
Brian-
that.
Brian's right. That's kind of, that kind of comes into the culture part, or distinct cultural differences to the different areas is, part of what makes them that way. So it fits in here or elsewhere, for sure.
I think we'll probably have something in the community design thing about the villages, but in the community facilities and infrastructure section, there's a section on villages, and it's curious because
Hard to hear Margot, too. I don't know if you can pull your mic closer.
I think my mic's not on is the problem.
Yeah, it's not.
Let's try it, no.
There should be a green light.
You want to sit over here?
Well,
Borrow Barbara's.
Barbara's is not on either.
Oh, well, that explains it.
Oh, Lord, he's on it. We've got our expert.
I cut the wires over on the left side.
They're comfortable chairs or
And
microphones?
while they're working on that, yes,
Yeah.
the community design section is still yet to come, and there will be a good deal of discussion, and based on these comments too, I think, we'll discuss the Cape Cod place types and the villages and how they fit into the sort of regional themes and so forth. So this is all good, good fodder for that.
On for a second.
You were on for a second. Oh, now we're on. Good. Now we're off.
Yeah.
Dimming.
Would you, along this is a bigger concept. Harwich is known as a quiet resort town. Thank you. Would we describe ourselves as an agricultural community? Okay, all right, so Bernadette and I are gonna make this better. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that in the community facilities and infrastructure section, there's a subcategory on villages, and it describes 4 villages,
7, right.
and there are 7, and among the ones that it leaves out are Harwich Center and East Harwich, which are arguably more definable places than North Harwich and Pleasant Lake. So we got to do some cross-referencing between the sections to make sure
That
that.
entire paragraph should be deleted and probably replaced with a much shorter thing explaining that we got a whole bunch of villages, but it didn't work, whatever the shortcut to that. that section doesn't work.
And it's super hard because we're not seeing this all together, right? Like you've got a community design section that's coming, that's why I feel like, you know.
It is, and you'll soon have, hopefully soon, you know, by your next meeting, I hope you have a complete package of at least first drafts of everything, so you'll
Okay.
see,
Okay,
you'll see the whole picture.
okay. So, what, in terms of taking advantage of your professional expertise, what I meant is right now for the draft goals and draft policies, is there like, if everyone's on that last page, I would offer to add not just protect and preserve significant cultural, historical, and archaeological. There we go, values and resources of the town. I think we want to, like, I think we want to put something sort of looking forward there. So like foster innovation, you know, this, I mean, these are.
I just feel like they could be written for any town.
Correct, that's what I'm trying to say. That's like, let's give it 5 minutes here. It's 5 before 6. Can we say something more specific there? Like, I mean, we're gonna take out, you know, what do you want to say that's Harwich specific here? Throw it all at the wall.
Well, you know, in the first paragraph, you know, we question whether we define ourselves as an agricultural community.
We're not.
We have a distinct
We have-
agricultural heritage.
Right, which I like that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
roots,
get
roots
down
in agricultural
Right.
and fishing.
And then you get down to the last one, though, continue to protect and preserve traditional agriculture and maritime development and uses. You know, and if you talk to our resident cranberry expert, our traditional agriculture is basically a dying industry on the Cape, all over, not just Harwich. So, you know, I don't know how that works as having that as a policy.
Can I just ask a question here? I assume the continued twos are based on what was in the last plan, so if that was a goal or policy, then you use the continue to?
Yeah, some, you know, carried some forward, also, looking at the regional plan and some suggested policies in there, so it's kind of a blend of,
Okay.
yeah.
My gut is, I would leave out the continue to, and just say,
Preserve and enhance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Protect and
Because
preserve.
I think people could argue that we haven't done a very good job on some of
Yes.
these things so far, you know? And
No,
so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
In something like, though, that
You don't want to
last,
continue and not so good a job.
the last draft policy, you know, we're not really going to have luck protecting and preserving our traditional agriculture, but it may be a good policy to say, support the transference or the transition from traditional agriculture to the burgeoning farm-to-table agricultural movement in our town, or something like that.
Yep, that's why I'm throwing it all at the wall. What I was gonna say, and then again, we're gonna make it better, but tossing it here, you know, there's, the culture of Harwich is that people, you know, the community, you know, lived, worked, and served in Harwich, you know, or like, you know, thrive in Harwich, and,
We're also a summer community. I mean, there's also a tourist aspect. There's, none of that jumped out.
tourism is the biggest industry now, but I
Right.
think we do want to preserve and protect in whatever way we can our roots in maritime and agriculture. I
You
mean,
could
it goes
say-
without saying,
you could say.
we are like every other town, we're a tourist town.
Roots in maritime agriculture, tourism, that you can list this all productively. Thank you, Sharon, for getting it
Yeah.
down. The arts, innovation.
I don't think tourism is your culture, though. Culture is what attracts the tourism. tourism's an industry.
Right, but we're not saying anything about the summer seasonality.
I think
or
the vibe down here attracts the summer
Yeah.
people, right? Like, I don't really say that, but.
Right.
The other thing you didn't,
Because I don't think the culture's just for the summer people.
no, 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 no,
Summer
no, no, no,
people
it's
is
part of
culture,
it.
but-
It's part of it, though. Like
Yeah.
a different, unique lifestyle.
There's an outdoor vibe, there's a historical vibe, and there's an outdoor natural vibe that attract people year-round, but it also attracts quite a bit.
Yeah, I
of
think
summer.
like the beauty and all the stuff that goes into the town attracts the people here, but then when they're here, they're also finding ways to have fun and let loose and be with each other, right? And like, part of that is, I think, the downtown scene and some of the other things like music. I don't know, I think you gotta at least address, like, maybe talk about it somehow.
Yeah.
That's why we
Yeah,
got,
I think it can be mentioned, but I don't think it's a huge part of,
I hope it's
culture
not,
in the way
because a
that-
lot of it has to do with drunken people at 1 o'clock in the morning and clubs and everything.
exactly.
Not exactly what I want
It-
Harwich
yeah.
to be remembered
Yeah.
as.
No,
It's a good thing I can walk home.
Yeah.
all right, all right. Finish up the Harwich Cultural Heritage section, all right.
Yeah, I mean, the whole issue of tourism was the industry that came
Superseded, yeah.
came alive as the heritage of agriculture and shipbuilding and moving freight by sailing, started sailing, but, and those folks had, skills that in boating, which became an attractive thing as people came down for the summer. The Riano fleet along the shore between, I mean, that was
Way
a
on
big thing.
seniors, yeah.
Yeah,
there's a
And-
vibrant outdoor,
hunting and fishing, our wood carver over here, he was basically a waterfowl hunting guide. And he carved stuff for his clients, so.
All right, Sharon, this is, we're gonna put Bernadette and I on the hook here, that we're gonna, make this, we're gonna give you a solid turnaround on this, with kind of incorporating this feedback in a week. So, with the goal of trying to.
Hi,
have this-
Joyce.
Oh, go ahead, Mary. Let me just finish this thought, Mary. With having the unifying, with the goal of in August, having all this in one place so we can start to kind of understand how this all relates. Yes, Mary?
If I may just jump in
Please.
with, I've been listening to everyone, and everyone is basically on the same page. And how I look at this cultural document, I found it was one of the, it's only 2 pages. But as I was looking at it, and also with listening to all the comments, it is the foundation of the comprehensive plan. Because when I hear about feedback and about everyone here and about how there's roots in agriculture, what everybody is basically saying, we value that we come from this point and we can transition to the future. And I think having this down with that type of sentiment or emphasis will really resonate with so many of the residents here as a foundation. Does that make sense?
It does.
Am I
That was
making
very,
sense at all?
very articulately put. It was a very, cherry on the top, Mary. Thank you. It's good.
Thank you.
That was perfect. All right, moving right along. It was excellent. Thank you for summarizing so well that. G, moving along. Review and discuss the draft community facilities and services section. I took this as kind of an inventory of what we got.
Yeah, and I was going to suggest that, the committee that we have for the open space plan is made up of a lot of the town department heads. And we had a workshop last week, and it was really helpful to have them all there and have them comment on things. And I was thinking, Christine, maybe this section in particular could be circulated to them to get their feedback on, because this is what they do, you know, in various different departments.
And there were just kind of, just brief little things, and we're gonna jump in maybe before we circulate it. I wouldn't lead with the tech. I would lead with the Harwich school system, you know, which is Harwich, Monomoy. Like, you know, I understand why someone led with the tech is important. The sort of heart of the community is in the Monomoy school system, and the tech is part of that. But as Margot pointed out, there's not 4 villages, there's 7. West Harwich is just wrong. It was straight up wrong. I was like, wow, that is not West Harwich, but someone made the connection, it may be East Harwich, but the dump, there was some good information about the dump. You probably want to put the treasure chest in there, which is, the treasure chest is the swap, which people feel strongly about.
So I think, I assume that your staff must have, you know, put this together using some info from the town website for different departments. And so it would be great to get that feedback directly from the department heads to say, you know, is this still accurate? And, you know, is there something else that's really important about, you know, what's going on?
This section in particular is
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Now, I don't know if it goes here or the culture, but there's also quite a bit of nonprofit activity.
Love it.
Right? You got family
Love it.
pantry, I mean, there's a,
Ooh, I love it. The food pantry, which is the Cape Cod Family Pantry, incredibly important.
thrift shops, several.
The Harwich Fund, the Harwich Children's Fund, which had struck out to me, that I actually was thinking about it in terms of culture, but I love that in terms of community services.
And I could work on a paragraph if, I'm not sure what section it goes,
I
but.
think I read somewhere that there are more nonprofits per capita in our county than anywhere else, I think, in the country.
That,
would like
that's
to-
not surprising. I mean, it is an amazing number. I think there's 90 in
If you
Harwich.
look how many just do food.
Not as active as you might think. Some of them are foundations, but there's a fair, it's a fair number.
Yeah.
So,
Did
maybe
every-
Jim and I can volunteer to do a little bit.
Love it.
Yeah.
Jim and Brian.
Definitely.
Did anyone feel like we got like our, you know, our fire, water, our fire, our ambulance, our police? Did we get that? Do we need more?
Well, that's why I say it would be good to consult the folks who actually do all of those things and see if we missed something important.
One last
You know,
thought.
this is another thing where the hazard mitigation plan comes in with the community services and all the department heads. I mean, they're the ones putting this together that we have, that are gonna lead us through that whole thing there too, where you were talking about a section in there, Christine, but that all ties into this also.
Yes, it does. And we are working with several of the department heads as well as other or private nonprofits or organizations that work with particularly the segments of the population that are considered vulnerable. So we do have representation from the Cape Cod Food Pantry, the Harwich Housing Trust. So, yeah. And to your point, I'd be happy to just circulate this to them as well. And it does interface very nicely with the hazard mitigation plan.
Okay, cool.
What would be good is to get your comments, have us, you know, fill in some gaps, and then do that.
Sure.
You know, send it around to staff,
Okay.
so at least it's
Yeah.
correct and updated and,
Okay.
Conservation Trust is in here. So let's, big picture, policies. Continue to minimize, I'm just reading them out loud, to minimize the amount of newly disturbed land and impervious surfaces through continued open space acquisition, conservation, and low-impact development design strategies. I think that's consistent with what we have heard from our community. I really like your point about not using continue, but like minimize. It's just better writing, actually. It's two fewer or less words a line. Promote context-sensitive building and site design and reuse strategies. That's also, we've heard that in our survey data, that people see a lot of empty buildings and stuff like that and, like to use them. Coordinating the siting of capital facilities and infrastructure to enhance the efficient provision of services and facilities that respond to the needs of current and future town residents and visitors. That is strong. We could have more than 3.
You may have going, like, as you get further into this and you get feedback from staff as well, that there may be specific policies with regard to future planning for facilities needs that could be included in here as well. These are very general as a starting point.
So-
Many
so-
of these are.
Given the fact that we're not including the rec plan, we could have a policy that maybe speaks to the rec plan carrying something out. I'm just thinking off the top of my head.
That point, I would love to put in there, we heard this over and over again in our survey data, that strong recreation programming for both, with a focus on our youth, but for community members as a whole, is an important part of this town, so that should be put there.
It also has things about seniors. I mean.
Yeah, well, that was, I'm being inclusive of all ages, anticipate maintaining our elementary school. It gets complicated with the Monomoy Regional, but that's also something we've heard. I think this, if we're going into, again, what people have told us, looking at the, because we have our very valuable police fire in here, I would say we're not venturing out of the line to say, promote policies that allow our, what's the word, our important community, our town servants is the wrong word, but allow people, town employees to work, to be able to live and work, to live in town.
Attainable.
Yeah, yes, so, I'm wording that but we've heard over and over again that, right, a public safety issue is, fire chief, police chief have gotten before town meeting, like, if you can't employ, if you can't have police officers and firefighters, this extends to teachers, living in town, then the actual quality of your services that are diminished in terms of like overtime and things like that. We are not stepping out of bounds by like saying that. We want to encourage policies that allow those town employees, servants? Town staff to be able to live in our community.
And I don't know if this is happening in our town, but I talked to teachers and some first responders in other towns, and one of the interview questions that they've been asking people is, do you already have secured housing down here?
100%,
like-
all the time. I mean,
yeah.
we've heard this from the superintendent of schools, if they
Yep.
can't hire the teacher. I mean, it's really challenging to hire the teachers they want. I mean, we know this, it all goes back to housing and water, but like, we should put this in community facilities and services, yeah.
But also, in terms of emergency services, when either a hurricane comes ashore, or we have a blizzard, having our public works folks, because they're the backbone of our emergency
Yes,
service.
well, I mean, you get all
Responding.
better outcomes, better care when, culturally competent care. I mean, there's like all of social science is based on that. So yes, we should put something like that. Anything else anyone wants to throw on the wall about this?
Was it?
Again, if they're like, again, future facilities, infrastructure needs,
We want to say something of like maintaining our, so do you say like maintaining our important community spaces, and you could reference this, the elementary school, the 204, the library, the community center. some of this is obvious, but I guess that's the point of putting it in the plan, right?
So I guess you mentioned something on one of the policies. Do we really see a lot of vacant buildings around town? I mean, we see a lot of vacant houses around town.
I think when
But-
people started to feed back with this, I would say not vacant, maybe potentially underused. Like if you
Yeah,
think about,
okay.
so West Harwich is a great example, and people gave us that in our survey data. Like the school, which this is right,
Yeah,
the school, important cultural history. Okay, that's starting to be used. The church, the Baptist church, which
Yeah.
is also has its own thing. Across the street, the building that was in like a meditation space, it was an old lock store. And then you have the rug place, and I mean, you actually,
Yeah, okay,
and
Bishop's Terrace.
yeah, so I mean, I think it's fairly soft when we say reuse strategies, but yeah,
Okay.
that was coming to us in
Re-
survey data.
Reuse or repurposing?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
way, way, way back, and we had a conversation about, I didn't understand why we had all these empty buildings when I drove from, the hospital area on 28. And they're saying, why can't we use some of these empty buildings for redoing them and into housing and stuff? And you said, well, it's between cost and all these other things, but at some point, we have to, my opinion is we have to set costs aside if we have facilities that we can do, kind of like what they're doing, the old,
School is like a good,
the old school,
Yeah.
or right there on Parallel and Bank. They're turning what
Yeah,
was,
the
you know,
condos.
right, into,
Yeah.
turning into apartments there and things. I mean, we've got to be a little bit more creative than we have been historically, and the almighty buck can't be the control on all of this because we're running out of land.
which I think
Sure,
people, that's
yeah.
what it's telling us. So I think in that
So-
plan, I think that's a
Yeah,
fairly
yeah,
soft,
okay, Yeah,
I think that's a good,
no,
Yeah.
I guess
I think there's all sorts of opportunities for repurposing buildings
Like,
that
don't
were
kick
just-
that can down the road, like, you gotta hit it head on, is what you're saying, yeah.
all right, so
Okay.
the plan for this section, Jim and Brian are gonna maybe, be the, you're gonna be the, you were gonna add some, your
We're gonna add a
nonprofit.
paragraph.
You're gonna add a paragraph. We gave you some feedback about kind of making this better, and then Christine is gonna shop it around. Thank you. And we gave you, I think, some concrete policies that are, we would like to see in there. Good. Any other before we move on there? Oh, wow.
Oh, they're up here too.
All right, so moving on to H, which I would love Margot and Barbara to take the kind of lead on. It's my sense from looking at your feedback, though, not deliberating on, but just reviewing. Your feedback was on the natural resources section that you thought we had made a big jump forward. So I was hoping maybe we could kind of
Yeah.
check a box for Sharon.
Yeah,
If you want to take us through it, or however you want to.
Well, I just thought that the second draft was light years better than the first draft.
Hey!
Huge
And-
improvement.
Yeah, and
you.
it's much more coherent and organized, and it has a lot more information in it about Harwich-specific stuff. So, I thought all of that was really good. The only real,
You needed lakes and ponds, though, right?
yeah, we need to add lakes and ponds.
Yes.
And so that's a very important element. And, I think we, as a committee, should take another look at the goals and policies and decide, have we covered what we want to cover?
Let's do it. I was gonna say it's a perfect thing to talk about trees and fertilizer. Feeling punchy. Natural resource. Do you have it there, if you mind reading it out loud, and I should get to it then?
Well, we've got draft goals for a whole bunch of different topics. So, starting with water resources, there's a broad goal to maintain a sustainable supply of high-quality drinking water and to protect, preserve, and restore the ecological integrity of Harwich's fresh and marine surface water resources for present and future community needs. So that's a huge umbrella for all of the water resources stuff. And then there's some specific policies underneath that relate to each of the different subcategories, like, well, I would argue that, see, again, this gets back to cross-referencing how we organize this with the outline, but you've got water resources policies, you've got a coastal resources goal and policies for that, you've got a wetlands goal and policy, wildlife habitat, open space, and we're missing the lakes and ponds.
Would it be more powerful to merge these into fewer categories, and is that allowed?
Merge them into fewer categories?
Well, just like if you have water resource, okay, if water resources goal and policy, that makes sense. But does it make sense to have like wetland, wildlife, plant as, you know, as two separate or like, should you have, I know you want a section, I think it makes sense to talk about lakes and ponds, but do you have those in separate? Does it need to be in separate categories, or are those related?
I would argue that it's good to have the
Fine.
level of detail
That's
that we've got.
Okay.
I think that's good.
That's fine.
I guess the one little tweak I might suggest is, when we're talking about water resources policies, what we're really talking about here is water supply and groundwater quality and water supply. So I don't know if we want to be a little clearer about that, because we go on to, you know, some other very specific things, but these policies really relate to protecting drinking water.
Right.
So,
Even though they talk about wastewater, really, that really should be a separate section on itself and not necessarily in this, not necessarily in the natural environment.
well, it's hard to really separate
Well,
them.
I'm talking about real wastewater, not
Yeah.
septic and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
But
But, I mean, I think these are good. You know, I don't disagree with any of them. I'm just wondering, have we forgotten anything?
So what stuck out to me, based on what we heard from the postcards, the big survey, and the data, and the in-person sessions, is that there's potentially an appetite for at least discuss, and what if you could put this, encourage discussion of, you know, conservation-based policies in the community, including increased protection around tree cutting, fertilizer, and zoning changes to protect open space. I mean, that is, it's just a draft, but that is representative of what we have heard.
Mhm. Yep.
It's not saying we should have a tree cutting ban, but we're saying you know,
no, but that was brought up on,
repeatedly, and at
Very
the
much
last
so.
session, you Christine had a lot of experience on the vineyard with some of the, you know,
Some of the housing policies.
yes,
and-
what has been historically interpreted here as maybe heavy-handed is perhaps interpreted less so. And I don't know that we have to say, like, we necessarily support this, but I think we would be good stewards by saying, like, consider, encourage, discuss. Like, we should probably put it in there, I guess. That these are being, it's almost like even reporting, like these are being talked about.
Yeah, it could go here. It could also go in the land use section.
Maybe it can go in both.
Yeah,
And we heard about trees, fertilizer, and zoning
Yeah.
over and over and
Yeah.
over again. I don't know if any of it could pass town meeting right now, but, you know.
One thing I'm never going to understand is, there was a lot close by us that had 20 trees on it. They got permission to cut down those 20 trees in 5 minutes.
They
But
don't
then-
even need permission.
No, they don't hear, but then if you have trees on your property, they don't want you to cut any down. It's sort of, it's a funny set of dynamics, that it's okay to do it if you're building a house, but not if you just want to have more light or something. But
it depends on where it is. If it's in, if it's in a buffer zone for a wetland or a pond, the regulations are more stringent
Right, well,
than,
as it
in
should be,
fact,
yeah.
there are regulations, and outside of those buffer zones,
I don't think we have
there
any
really
tree
isn't.
protection in there.
There really isn't.
But I think there's people talking about it.
Correct, that's why I'm trying to say, could we just kind of include that this is like,
Yeah.
hey, we're reporting on the community, given what we have gathered, a
Yeah.
policy recommendation is to consider or continue to encourage vibrant community discussion. Like, I mean, I'll be very candid, like, the fertilizer, okay, I don't think that's like, really sorted itself out yet, the pros and cons, what is actually the positive, and in a deliberative democracy in a town meeting, yes, no, Barbara, I know, but like the different economic versus ecologic factions that debate this at town meeting, I think we want to we've heard that we want to continue to encourage discussion about this.
But it also gets into, at what point do you begin to take it from a policy or discussion point to actual regulation or implementation? and
Yeah, I'm
enforcement?
wondering,
So,
does something like that belong in the action plan, rather than in the policies per se?
You could have a little bit of both, and policy could be
Yeah.
kind of general, and the action could be specific action to, pursue or develop a, land clearing, tree protection
Love it.
bylaw, something like that.
Consider pursue a land clearing, you put it though, land clearing, consider
Yeah.
pursuing a policy on fertilizer management, and what was the other one? Zoning, right? I mean, it's-
Fertilizers and pesticides.
Yeah.
The things that, Patrick Otten brought to town meeting this year, and
Right.
every
right.
single one of them got voted down.
Right, right.
But I think the reason they got voted down was not that people didn't
Correct.
see merit in them, it's that they felt that there wasn't enough public process.
Correct,
before
that's
it was
why I'm
brought
trying
town
to be
meeting.
loosely supportive of this, was by saying.
Patrick launched off on his own.
Yeah.
without-
Yeah,
He did better the year before.
he did, with the plastics.
We do the
and-
balloons?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was probably reactionary to that.
It was
but I,
different.
can-
different-
No, go ahead,
sorry, go
Christine.
David.
No, I'm done.
No, I was just gonna say to Margaret's point, there are regulations on the books, I think also not to forget that, and we wanna build on those as a foundation, cause I know the Conservation Commission is very restrictive in terms, I think, there's a very thorough vetting of projects when they come before their board, and
But a
So
lot
there
of
are-
things do not, that is the,
Yeah.
that's correct. Not not all boards end up catching
Right.
certain development or clear cutting,
Yeah.
so. I'm just saying, I do think it's just important to recognize that there are
Totally.
things on the books
Yeah.
currently.
totally, and maybe that's an action point, or wherever it fits in, because I admittedly do not have the sense that of this globally, how this document's all gonna come together as the professionals do in the room. But maybe there's a point of saying that expanding on those existing policies so that there is increased review. Because we all do know that like a significant amount of clear cutting is possible depending on how.
And we do have a,
Because my other second point on the clear cutting, it was identified that the town planner would inspect trees, and to be honest, I don't have any certification
Right.
to be able to do that.
Sure, sure.
As part of my job, and I think that
Sure.
was some of the flaws
In the
some of
proposal, right.
Yeah.
proposals. So I do
Yes.
think if
Yes.
there are,
Yes.
if there is an ability to look at that a little bit more carefully and maybe assign it in appropriate places that will
Yeah.
go further.
That goes back to the governance piece and holding this plan accountable to
And
all,
how,
like,
and
who does
how,
it go to?
it's so
who
important, that's why
enforces it?
I'm kind of going back to some
Yeah.
of this generalist language. If you put it in there, right, and we're doing this not because we wanna just create this document, but because we'd like to do something good for Harwich. So if you put it in there in a generalist language, and then we're gonna go shop it around the important committees that are giving their time in the fall,
Yeah.
then that perhaps supports the whole mission, right? So that's why I was talking about this generalist language. For sure, like, I don't think, it's outside of the scope of this process of that, we're gonna figure out how to do that, but the ideas. Yeah.
Sharon and David, I'm
Wrote
sorry, I think I made
a
that
pol- a
interrupted
policy, while you were all talking, so I, figured one out that you could add, to
Thank
this
you.
section.
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
the governance
The
section.
placeholder, we have a governance
We have,
placeholder. yes.
we have that, and a big problem in this town is that there's inadequate staffing to do the things that they're already charged with doing, never mind do more things. So, when it comes.
I don't agree with that at all.
That was sarcasm.
I never said it.
So, I think that's, and we've heard that from the public too, in the workshops. So I think there does need to be a discussion of that.
Put it in the governance placeholder, I
Yeah.
agree, I don't,
Yeah.
we'll see, more to be revealed.
When we talk to those departments though, and we ask them like, are you good with all your work? And they're like, no, give me more. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna say that, right? So,
No, but I think that Margot raises a very good point. That's a challenge across many municipalities.
Of course.
It's not just Harwich, and it is a challenge. But I have to say, just in my 6 months, I've been very impressed with the amount of work that does get done with the
Yeah.
limited amount of resources and staffing that the town has. But it will continue to be a challenge, and I think with housing, it's only going to continue to pose issues, when we want to implement projects or programs.
Yeah.
Right.
Given that governance is such a challenge, are there leading practices that we may learn from other communities?
Other towns.
We can't think of all the wonderful things to do with limited amount of resources, but there's gotta be some, and maybe that's an activity, and it's not necessarily a policy.
Maybe put it in the governance placeholder, consider,
Well, consider leading practices,
Yeah.
test or evaluation, and maybe we need to do a little bit of that
Yes.
between now and town meeting too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would put a plug in for regional coordination and cooperation, because there are ways to do things there are many things that can be done better, not on just a town-by-town
We gotta
basis.
get smart.
when we're sitting next to Chatham and Dennis.
Yeah, so,
With that, just being cognizant of the time, and we potentially have 3 more sections to go through.
Just a
yes,
quick point.
please.
Margot, in the wetland resource policies, it sort of prevent the loss or degradation of wetlands, vernal pools. Is there any talk of restoration of impacted areas, especially marsh areas? That possibly should be mentioned. I know.
yeah, actually, that would be an important, I think, addition to this, because
Yeah.
there's quite a bit of activity going on in
What
town
Wellfleet is
with,
doing with their marsh restoration project.
yeah, and, look, Coldbrook right here, and the trust is talking about doing it for the Jenkins Bogs over by Hinckley's Pond, and even, considering it for some other locations in
And
town.
there's-
So, yeah, we ought to have something in there
Whatever
about that.
that body, that the committee that Mark Forrest is on, that they bring in a lot of money, and
Yeah.
federal money,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is what's funding up what they're doing up in Wellfleet.
Right,
And you
Yep.
basically just need to have a project developed, in consultation with them.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they have a lot of money to spend.
Yep, I worked on that project for 10 years.
Yeah.
And someday it will actually happen. It is happening.
Love it.
You after another one?
No restorations of bad.
So are you good to kind of send this into this section, kind of into the big, if we're moving towards XTC to having a complete outline in August,
Yeah,
you can kind of throw this into the mix?
yeah, I think we're very close here.
You can add some final
Yeah.
tweaks to it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
some things that we should clean up.
As opposed to, right.
Yeah, I might, in the goals and policy, I might drop the TDR thing out. We've been talking about TDRs in this is transfer of development rights. We've been talking about it as a zoning tool for 30 years, and it just has never happened. So rather than having to explain to people what it is and what you use it for, and I think we could just drop it out of there.
You don't have, in Massachusetts, you just don't have the power granted by the state to planning boards to push it.
Well, I mean, there are ways to do it, but it's complicated, and it's so complicated that nobody wants to take it on.
Well, with the right state laws, like in California, it's a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
To that end, Christine, if we finish and keep going on to the next section, Christine, I don't, as you're looking at it as our professional town planner, like, there are other tools you want to include in this. I mean, I think
For
You
the
should-
natural resources.
yeah, you should feel empowered on behalf of
Yeah,
the committee. I
absolutely.
mean, you've heard everything we've heard and, and seen all the data we've heard, and you know the best practices, and, I mean, we're all aligned sort of as we're moving forward here. I don't think there's any major criticism
And
of that.
as the open
Absolutely,
space
yeah.
and rec plan
Yeah.
gets finalized, there will most likely be some policies in there that, regarding land protection and,
Anyone's gonna
conservation
fault
that would be
us for
appropriate here.
say it loud, say
Say
it
a couple
proud.
times. Say it as many times as possible.
Yes, because that's what the whole community has been telling us over and over again. All right, do we want to do, since I mangled the words, or whatever the words got mangled, are we doing climate mitigation, or climate resilience, or energy first? What would anyone, do you want carbon, or do you want coastal resilience? What do you want first? Anybody feel strongly?
I don't care which. Let's do climate.
Let's do climate, all right.
Alphabetically first.
Yeah.
Sure. Then we'll and go to energy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Consultant, I'm paid to observe.
This is, I can't even remember where it was, but I noticed in both of these sections that there are some acronyms that we use, and this is sort of a universal comment for the whole document, is wherever we use those, the first time you use them, you should spell them out, because otherwise, people are just kind of scratching their heads saying, what's that? I think we might have done it right here and done it wrong someplace else, but anyway, it's just a general principle to follow.
Is there an opportunity here, Christine, to put, you were talking about like climate catastrophe, you used a different term for,
The hazard mitigation.
there you go, hazard.
It's not, it's more about preparedness
Okay.
and, some of it is part emergency services, but it's also planning and preparing in case of, and so it's more preparedness, and working with, groups to take care of certain segments of the population, particularly those
Got it.
that would be most vulnerable,
So,
and property that's most at risk.
So there is a paragraph about the town is in the process of updating the 2017 hazard mitigation plan. Is there more, or are you thinking in terms of policies or strategies? Just not sure what what you would like us to add at this point. I mean, knowing that that's still in
No,
its early
we're
stages.
just starting, so,
Right.
I think, Sharon, I can send you just a quick couple of sentences just to add
Sure,
on it.
okay.
Okay, that'd be great.
That'd be great.
Is it very controversial, I don't know, to just change the verbiage, but the intent and the draft policies, instead of consider developing? I mean, is it really wild and crazy just to say, develop a community-wide policy statement? I liked plan for sea level rise, and can we just say, adopt flood area design guidelines for low-lying coastal and upland areas?
Yes. It sounds stronger that way.
And in general, yeah, that's a good recommendation throughout.
Yeah.
Instead
Yes.
of the consider.
I mean-
Strongly,
If you, yeah,
don't-
just
I
develop.
mean, and maybe
use
that will,
action terms.
whatever lovely committee in town, maybe that just helps, I mean.
Yeah.
Yep.
In the goal, should we drop, or could we drop after the comma, including but not limited to that associated with climate change? I mean, I don't know how that helps, just,
That relates back to the regional goal. It should appear somewhere, we've been
it's like,
flagged on
it's a
it.
political term these
It's-
days, but.
Yeah, it's a necessary part of the regional goal, so it should go in one of the goals, and this is generally where it goes, but,
Okay, all right.
wherever you,
If we feel that it's that important.
I think the commission would definitely catch you on that one, if you didn't include it, because it's such a,
Climate
it's a
resilience.
major issue, so.
And it seems like, okay, so we talked about the policy, okay, and that it would be nice to reference the hazard mitigation in the draft policies, revisit, maintain, strengthen
Sure, yeah.
hazard mitigation. Because this,
Just update and then, pursue implementation, because there'll be implementation items in that plan
Right.
as well. Sure, that's,
So, by saying that we should recommend, or our policy should be to follow all of the guidelines for the low-lying areas, et cetera, where does that put the town and people that are in those areas that choose to not, that don't want to sell their house to the federal government or anybody because, I mean, we're getting into some areas here that we need to be really careful about how we're treading, because there's some state policy, there's federal policy, and town, and what you can and can't make people do. I know on some of the insurance things now that they're raising a lot of houses that are close to the water because of the, and stuff like that. However, there are policies out there that are saying that, no, if you live in this area, it's like, you're not gonna get insurance and we're buying your house back. There are people that are gonna say no. So I
has
just,
that been an issue in Massachusetts for buying your house back?
it's usually a federal program. I do not, that's what I'm saying is, go ahead, David. Sorry.
I don't think it's a current issue in Harwich, but it may be soon. Right now, there's a very short list, I think I can count on one hand, of properties that fit that description. But there are a lot of properties, if you look at where we're supposed to be according to Cape Cod Commission maps in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, I'm not sure which, then there may be a lot of such houses. Right now, there are not, but they could be.
I guess that's why we're saying it's kind of generic. I appreciate totally what you're saying, and you don't want to leave anyone behind but I mean, I think the statement is saying plan for sea level rise, erosion and flooding, and participating in the state's MVP 2.0 and federal HMP processes, right, is kind of generic. I mean, isn't it, I
Well,
think?
Yeah, I just, yeah.
I get what you're saying. I do. Christine has a comment.
The MVP and and the hazard mitigation plan, they're not, part of the National Flood Insurance Program that the town does participate in, in order for the town to participate, the town has to submit a hazard mitigation plan. as part of that. So it's in terms of the National Flood Insurance Program, I agree with David, we're not quite there in terms of any taking of property or forcing people to sell their home. But these are programs that, over 10, 15, 20 years, we do want to prepare for that. But I think the hazard mitigation plan, the state's municipal vulnerability plan, those are very important planning documents that enable the town to do a lot of other grant writing for projects and program implementation. If we don't participate in those programs or do those plans, the town, we're putting the town at a disadvantage by not doing them.
No, I understand. No argument there, I just.
Yeah, you're pointing out the nuance of it. I appreciate that, yeah. With that, do you think in 16 minutes, we could get through carbon and transportation, at least to help Sharon? I think we can. Should we go on to carbon?
Carbon.
I've got it open, so I'll read it. Focusing on the draft policies, prepare a townwide greenhouse, and to Margot's point, I don't know what GHG means, inventory and climate action plan. Electrify the municipal vehicle fleet and explore installation of EV public charging stations to promote low or no carbon transportation technologies. I would add, being respectful of no more asphalt. Work with regional partners to identify additional appropriate locations for municipal solar projects, and pursue grants to enhance energy reduction and efficiency measures in public buildings. Is there anything big we're missing there, Christine? Like, what's the standard? To borrow what Brian would say, what's like the best practice around this? I mean, understanding that,
Or leading practice.
yeah, leading practice, or, yeah.
Best is hard.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the document has hit on some of the themes as well. I haven't dug into the
Yeah, it's
climate
fine. Yeah.
as much as some of the other policies.
I don't think it seems super
So some of the
controversial.
other sections rather, so,
Yeah.
but if,
I mean, I can imagine, I'm seeing what people would post on the old timers group about, well, are electrical vehicles really better? But this is sort of
How much
standard of care, so to
How
speak,
much more
right now.
solar opportunity is there for the municipal buildings and
Yeah.
parking lots and, where do they fit into this?
Well, parking lots are definitely fodder for more solar.
Right, but they fit into these policies, and they may be more actions than they are policy, but it's,
Yeah, the third bullet is, again,
so I see electrify the municipal vehicle fleet, but what about electrifying capture more solar?
no, it means like electric vehicles.
No, I know what that is, but I'm saying we're missing the one that
Right,
says,
there is,
put more panels.
around all of the Cape and all over the rest of the country where they've taken and built something, like if you go to the Brewster Golf Course.
Yeah, that's what I
there's
mean.
There's all solar on top.
Dump,
Just
the
like we
dump
did
has
at
this,
the,
the CAPS
transfer
dump
station.
is
Right,
full
they
of
go
solar
for the
panels.
You could take the whole, grocery stores, the two grocery stores,
Yeah, exactly,
Shaw's and stuff,
exactly.
and put tops on them and have a huge amount
I
of.
think you're saying like, yeah, where's the
Where's
opportunity?
the policy that
Yeah.
speaks to that?
Yeah.
Should there be one that says,
Yeah.
continue to look for ways
Private.
to,
Private development?
yeah.
Yeah, and Barbara just raised a good point, which is that we want to do that in a way that doesn't involve cutting down trees, because
Yes,
you're just
yes,
giving
yes.
up your carbon
Well, that's why I say
sequestration,
parking. And the
yeah,
type roofs
Yeah.
of buildings,
yeah.
Joni Mitchell song.
Well, the policy,
Sarah guys, they put up a solar panel.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is going on in other locations on the Cape. They're actually clearing land for solar
So say,
projects.
no, none of that,
Yeah.
none of that.
So you'd
Definitely not
you'd
that.
call these like gray fields or parking lots, or be a little
Yeah.
more specific, not
Yeah.
green fields.
Like, look at utilizing like current,
Yeah.
Well, I brought
Underutilized
up the point specifically
But the
about
poli-
municipal building roofs.
the policy, on this could be that, in all future town infrastructure planning, to look for opportunities for in parking lots, et cetera, to establish solar fields, and in reconstructing those parking lots or repaving them, make whatever improvements, like putting the dry pipe
Yeah.
on 28
Right.
because they're repaving it, and those sorts of things.
Can I chime in here
Please,
a moment?
Mary, go ahead.
It's Mary. Hi. As I'm looking at this document, and this might be a segue to the transportation, one of the ways that can mitigate greenhouse gases is just to really maybe a policy to encourage more public or a walkable community, because that is part of the culture of having villages. If we can do that anything that encourages less use of vehicles themselves.
Love it.
I don't know if that is feasible.
I think it's great.
And it
It's
could
great.
be hand in hand with the transportation one.
It's great, and it's great. It's also, we're like pro-tree around here from everyone telling us. So it's trees are big carbon sinks too, so, right.
But the less carbon footprint you have as far as, not using the vehicle. I know Harwich is a destination, but it would be nice that if it was a destination, then once you get here, you can park your car and forget it. And if that's feasible,
I love
then
it.
can it be put into a policy?
I love it. You're the unifier today, Mary, the transitioner. I love it. Let's transition.
Yeah.
Well, that's, again, I think that belongs in the land use section. We're talking about
Okay.
growth patterns.
We can
and,
repeat ourselves, can't we?
yes, we can, but the land use policy is more than just, zoning. You're thinking really about how do you want your community to function, and so it spills over into all of the other kinds of things that we're talking about.
Let's go to transportation. Yes, agreed. We have some real transportation experts around in here. The one thing that colloquially stood out to me about this, which this is the conundrum, is the second draft policy, promote sidewalk construction to improve village connectivity, ADA compliance. Was a big controversy by the tree in front of Brooks Free Library. And, it's a beautiful old tree, and people can tell you the historical significance of the tree and how compliant is that sidewalk, and is it lumpy from the tree?
And where
And so
feasible.
there's the great conundrum right here in a deliberative democracy.
Just
Go ahead, David. Yeah, you guys are the transportation
Well, to
experts.
follow up, sometimes federal and state policies or guidelines don't always fit easily. I wrote in my comments a couple examples. Complete streets, that often involves a level of improvements that changes rural character. And as I understand it, that's how Route 124 heading towards Brewster,
Right,
that ran afoul of that.
right.
I could also point out that's probably likely an issue on sidewalks between the harbor and the Harwich port. So we've got a section that really dives into complete streets, and I guess I'm just suggesting a little bit of buyer beware on that. Another one is just a pet peeve of mine. A little later on, we get into environmental justice neighborhoods. This has baffled me for over 10 years now. Apparently, the environmental justice neighborhoods in Harwich are Harwich Port and Harwich Center. Whatever census indicator has caused that to be the case, all I can say is those parts of Harwich are no more underserved
Correct.
than any others. So either environmental justice shouldn't be mentioned at all, or else very lightly.
Thank you for that. I mean, I guess we would probably sort of want to lead with, we're both saying two different things. I'm talking about the tree in front of the library, which people are losing their mind about, which I understand. And so maybe higher in the draft policies is local interpretation of what is potentially best for the community and understand that these federal policies are not.
Well, trade-offs
Yes.
between, and, you know, this is another section that I think it would be really great to have, like, Link Hooper take a look at, because he's, you know, he's dealing with roads and sidewalks and transportation planning all the time. And the sidewalk project in Harwich Port is one of the things that he's working on. But he mentioned when we had the workshop last week that this complete streets issue has been a problem on trying to, I think it was Sisson Road that they wanted to put.
There's
Doing safe routes to school on.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
a little bit of, a public record here, a little bit wackadoodle, because there are very few children who walk to school. You know,
But maybe they would walk to school if they had a safe sidewalk.
The
You know, that's kind of
but the population density of Harwich doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
in the sense of
You
you
would,
can
but
look
not
at.
very many.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, you can look at the, you know, how many kids go to that elementary school that live within, say, half a mile is.
But you can say that about any sidewalk in Harwich, period.
Right,
Only
'cause
time the
we're-
sidewalks are used is from June, July,
Yeah, we're a
August.
diffuse community. I guess, how do we put that in there? Like, you know, I love sidewalks, I love kids walking to school, but like, you know, how
Those
Well,
days
you
are
know,
gone.
how
Well-
practical is
Well,
that?
I guess it gets back to the trade-offs between, you know, having bike paths and sidewalks and, you know, transit and all of those things versus what are the community character and transportation impacts of those kinds of changes. And they don't always work together. I mean,
Yeah.
Route 6A, you know, going all the way across the north side of the Cape, it doesn't have any of the, I mean, there are sidewalks in some locations, but there's certainly no bike paths. And the reason why is because it's a historic district.
Right.
And people care about the trees, and they care about the buildings, and they care about how it looks. And so,
Well, when,
you know, this is an issue for every single town.
when the safe routes to school stuff came up, one of the initial routes they were going to put sidewalks down was Parallel Street.
Yeah.
And in the process, eliminating most of the street trees,
Yeah,
you know, and,
That's the same thing.
yeah.
you know, we.
And people freak
we
out
did
about
some-
that,
We
rightly.
pushed back, of course.
Justifiably.
You know, in the interim, you know, what's happened on Parallel Street, if you've been watching, is a lot of the trees have come down because they were old and actually needed to be taken down and replaced. Then they, you know, 20 years before, but no, they weren't.
But
And-
there are ways to do sidewalks that don't have to, you don't have to take down all the
Sure.
trees. There's a wonderful, in Barnstable, there's a wonderful neighborhood where they wound the sidewalk around the trees. And it, you know, it makes for, it's a place where kids can walk to school.
Well, it's also who's in charge. Is it the town in charge, or or MassDOT in charge?
Yeah.
Because, no, they have their.
But
I
it's-
think what we're saying here is that, you know, this has got the
Size is
bigger
not-
federal, state guidelines on there, but it's lacking the recognition of a local context. And to have that be a standalone section in our LPC, that we probably need to have that.
I got a couple of items that I think came up
Please.
quite a bit in the workshops that I don't see referenced here. And it could be I just can't find it. Just general parking at our public beaches, right? And parking in Harwich Port, and containing the people that park anywhere they want in Harwich Port in areas that they're not supposed to be parking. So we got a major parking issue.
In the height of our tourist season, 8 weeks of the year.
Well, somebody actually brought up an idea, which is to say, have people park at the high school and run a
Shuttle bus.
battery
The 204.
powered
Funk bus.
shuttle bus.
204.
Or 204, or there's nobody at the high school, right? And,
Well, they tried that, and they had a huge brouhaha about that about 5 years ago, if I remember.
Oh, I don't
It's been
remember that.
suggested a lot, but it's still a good idea.
Well, the discussion, the last time I was involved with it was the parking at the old fire
Old
station.
fire
Well,
station.
okay, well,
You know,
On Main
parking
Street.
there and And people, just the neighbors on Bank Street went insane that that increase in traffic was going to, well, I mean,
Well,
you know.
I'm not saying we have
yeah,
to solve it,
yeah.
but I think
No,
we
but
need to
we're
speak to
putting
it.
parking during our tourist season, right? This is recognizing the reality of Harwich, right? 8 weeks of the year, like there's Ferraris and Lexuses
Especially when
yelling
the
out
pipe-
there.
Especially when the piping plovers out. Red River Beach don't pay for their sticker like I do.
For 8 weeks of the year.
Do you build parking like they do at shopping malls for the month before Christmas
Yeah.
in Harwichport? Because, no, you don't do that.
I think, and if you probably might not have picked up on this in this language, but they're recommending in here, and this comes, from the Cape Cod Commission's approach to this, that the roads be designed for year-round traffic flow, not to try to accommodate the summer peak.
Love it. So we should include that.
Yeah, and so it's in here.
That
It's in-
sounds it sounds counterproductive to me.
No, it's recognizing that you don't want to overbuild and completely change the character of things to accommodate.
What's only 8 weeks of the year, 6
Yeah.
weeks of the year.
There's a happy medium there somewhere, but you're really constraining the 8 weeks.
Well,
That could become a public safety issue.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not wider streets, but it's that shuttle bus, or it's
oh,
something
yeah,
that.
exactly. There,
Yeah, but that's not a built environment. I
Okay,
mean,
fair point.
that's the whole thing, is that, we don't need 3 lanes if we're
Fair,
going to
fair point. We don't need traffic, we don't need parking lots.
So innovative approaches that expand for capacity during high tourist seasons without changing the built environment. There you go.
Fits in within the culture.
Brian's trolley. We'll call it the Brian trolley. We're at time, but.
Do we in any of these policies or set goals, do we talk about we talked about electrifying vehicles and solar, and now we're in transportation and the DOT and, I think there's a few other agencies that provide funding mechanisms to do this stuff. Up to 80% coverage on some buses, and then you can electrify those buses and send that energy back in when they're not being used to the grid and get arbitrage on that.
But
from a
that's
cost
not
perspective.
the buses aren't ours, though.
No, but we could.
But what I'm saying
Could
is
have a Brian
there's
trolley.
programs that allow you to do it, so if we're
That's
talking
right.
about
My
electrifying.
trolley
stuff,
could have solar panels on top.
Good, you literally could,
Innovative capacity.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about all the missed funding mechanisms that we're not capturing, do we build that into, I don't know if
Is that
that's
an
a
activity
position.
or is that a policy? But I think you're onto something, which is to say explore alternative sources of funding.
Yeah.
Because it
To,
just,
to propel some of this stuff, because to Barbara's point too, is let's not let the buck stop us. If there's a way where we can capitalize on all these programs, are they being explored at their fullest? And knowing that the town staff is down in terms of just resources, who's looking at it, and there's gonna be things that are missed, so is there ways we can, I don't know,
Well,
add that in there?
this is again, an example of something that regional cooperation can really help, because
think this
the
is a
the
great
Cape Cod
idea.
Commission's got a transportation staff who know how to do this thing, and they do a transportation plan for the whole Cape, and that's, you have to get on the list in the Transportation Improvement Program to get funding for various different projects, so there is a process,
and
basically.
on that same point, there needs to be.
Last
a
point, because we
spirit
want to be
of
respective of our
improvement.
lovely town staff who's helping us here.
Yeah, I think we need to continue to look wide, and we continue to ask for, are there newer ways of thinking? This has got to be built into the culture of executing the plan, not just, whoop, we put a paragraph in and we're done. Back to governance and the spirit of continuous improvement.
This is why when we're selling it this fall, you got to go out.
Oh, we can sell it.
Yeah.
No, but there's got to be a kind of a different spirit around the governance of this.
Yeah.
With that, yes, Sharon, I just want to be
So,
respectful of his time, because he's staffing us, yeah.
Very briefly, talk about schedule.
Yes.
Other than the housing.
Yes, so
production
housing,
plan.
so everyone kind of understands, whoever can come, but we'll have a digital option and stuff like that, but housing and trying to get HPP with Karen. And thank you, Ed, for this, I love the historical context, look at primary sources here with dates, and your feedback. Thank you, yes, go ahead.
Yes, so,
Yes.
just in terms of getting, revisions in kind of process for your
Yes.
next meeting.
Yes.
So what I have on my calendar for your next regular meeting is Tuesday, August 6th.
Correct. And Bernadette and I are going to turn around culture in a week. And then our plan was community services. There was a little feedback there. Jim and Brian are going to add a paragraph. Christine was going to shop to the town employees.
Sure.
Transportation and
So
community
when would you
facilities.
like to get revised, how far in advance? I mean, I think this was a
Well-
personally, a very productive session today. And going forward, now that you have a whole, stack of these, and we're gonna be churning out some more and getting revisions to you, how much in advance do you need
I
to
think
see
as
things?
early as possible, but Ed's going to have an
well,
opinion.
Technically, if you're sending out a packet with the agenda, it needs to go out at the same timeline that the agenda goes out.
Right, right.
So,
Well, yeah.
which is Friday, I believe.
No, I try to get it earlier because Christine's witnessed some of this. There's nothing good that comes in when I go by the skin of my teeth.
Okay.
That to be respectful of the
Okay,
staff,
that's
they
fine,
need as
but,
much lead time as possible.
So,
So-
whatever, if you say you want to get it out the Wednesday before,
Yeah,
Or-
then we ought to say that
we need it the week
everybody-
before.
Everybody gets you comments in by that Friday.
Yeah, I'm actually suggesting the reverse, which is we get you, the next round of revisions and
Yes.
new sections at least a week ahead of time. You review them, instead of commenting to us before the meeting, come to the meeting having reviewed them, comment to us,
Smart.
and then we go back and make another round. It'll speed things up and be more productive
Okay.
than if we do
No
the
burn less
reverse.
clock.
Yeah, so we
That's
we
fine.
get you
Yeah.
things a week ahead of time, you come to
Fine.
the meeting, everybody's reviewed everything,
Sick.
right, and then we have the discussion, and then we're.
And we're approaching this conceptually, that we're not wordsmithing, we're focusing on big ideas.
But also, and if there are
Yeah.
corrections, absolutely, we wanna,
Yeah.
and then, so after tonight's meeting, like, let's say next time, after next meeting, if you have written comments at that time, bring them to the meeting, or, submit them to us, and then we'll take all of that back. Does that make sense? Is that
Yes.
clear?
Instead of sending them before,
Instead of sending them before.
give them to Sharon this evening. Yes,
At the come
Okay.
prepared to discuss.
that's fine.
And
That's fine.
comment,
But if you're going to send out before our next meeting,
yes.
the comments you've got before, up to that point, if we have comments between now and what's the date in the middle of July that we need to get it to you?
That's a good point. So,
That's the
yes,
po- that's
follow
the
up from this.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say if you could,
The
within a
23rd?
week, if you could, any follow-up from tonight, and I took notes, any other additional comments that you
Within
didn't
a
think of?
week. Okay.
Within a week,
Okay.
and then we will get you
Okay.
the next set by, I think, the Tuesday, the 23rd or 24th at the latest.
Knowing we're going to have some housing action, hopefully, in
We will,
between then.
yeah, it's gonna
So by
be,
the-
there's
Yeah.
gonna be a lot for.
No.
the next
You're doing it,
meeting.
though. Everyone's doing it. It's amazing. This
Yeah.
is a
So
lot.
We should get comments to you by the 9th,
Correct.
That'd be great,
and then you'll get them
Great.
back out to us by the 23rd,
yes.
which will be 2 weeks before.
That'd be 2 weeks, and that,
Yeah.
we can work with that.
Christine's raising her hand.
Just two quick things. Karen had asked that we put together a stakeholder public meeting for the housing production plan. So I am just putting it out there that we are looking to do some tentative dates for the end of July, just as a stakeholder, so Karen has an opportunity to do a presentation
Sure.
to the community as part of the housing production plan, because I don't think that that's the only plan that hasn't had some type of
Sure,
community meeting.
Sure.
So-
I mean, all of it has been about housing, but
Yeah.
yes, I understand specifically, yes.
So we thought it might be a good opportunity to have the select board and the planning board, who have to sign off on it, to try and at least invite those boards in particular, in addition to the LCP, to attend the meeting. So I will update everyone once we finalize a date and a meeting time.
So does it make sense to then have our deep dive with her as a committee after that? Or
I-
before, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
I think she's just
Okay.
going to present a lot of the
Fine.
demographic,
Yeah.
a large portion of the needs assessment, but also going into some of the other draft goals and draft goals and strategies as well. The second item, I was asked to follow up relative to seasonal population meetings. The select board is not having a meeting with non-voting taxpayers, is my understanding. So I didn't know if this group is still interested in facilitating a meeting or some type of discussion with seasonal residents.
You know, I think we got enough on our plate for now.
We should probably have somebody available when, is it the selectmen that are gonna do,
She's saying they're not.
They're not.
not, oh.
What they are planning on doing is staff department heads, I think, the last several years have done updates in PSA announcements relative to work and projects and
Yeah.
so.
I'm okay with that, and where it kind of goes to my mind is when we have a working draft, like say September, we can maybe kind of hit this on the socials and we get a lot of engagement from the folks that are not
Yeah.
here year-round. I mean, and we've been open about input all along. I don't think that we have to have maybe something specific.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
Okay.
We should motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second.
And I think we're all in
Thank
favor.
you.
Yes, we'll just all take
Thank
that
you,
as, thank you, everyone.